From a small Finnish company to the undisputed king of mobile phones.
In the early 2000s, Nokia was not only the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer, it was also one of the most dominant industrial organizations in global technology history. By 2001, Nokia's global mobile phone market share had reached between 35 and 40%. In some quarters, this rate exceeded 41%. In other words, 1 in every 3 cell phones sold worldwide was a Nokia brand. This dominance was not limited to sales figures alone. Nokia was practically the backbone of the Finnish economy. In 2003, the company's contribution to Finland's GDP was approximately 4%. Its share in total exports is over 20%. The share of R&D expenditures nationwide was close to 30%. Nokia was not a phone manufacturer in the traditional sense. It was an industrial machine that operated flawlessly in terms of logistics, supply chain, and production optimization. It had dozens of factories around the world. From component procurement to assembly, every minute of every process was meticulously planned. Of course, models such as the 3310, 6600, and 1100 have become iconic in the minds of consumers. However, the real strength lay in the economies of scale, cost control, and flawless hardware engineering behind these models. Nokia phones were durable, had long battery life, and had lower failure rates compared to their competitors. Brand value reflected this as well. According to Interbrand data, Nokia was among the world's top 10 most valuable brands in 2007, with a brand value of approximately $40 billion. At this point, the fundamental problem Nokia faced was this. This tremendous success itself laid the foundation for future failure. In the story of Nokia's decline, Symbian is often singled out as the sole culprit. However, Symbian's failure stemmed less from being a poor engineering product than from its persistent use in the wrong historical context. Symbian was an operating system whose origins date back to the mid-1990s. It was originally developed for the PDAs of a company called Osborne. And the basic assumption was this: limited hardware, limited memory, low processing power, and minimum energy consumption. These assumptions were quite rational in the pre-smartphone world of the early 2000s. Symbian's core was extremely efficient. It used very little RAM, ran stably on low-frequency processors, and kept battery consumption to a minimum. For Nokia, this meant perfect harmony with hardware engineering. However, the problem was that Symbian couldn't evolve. It was clear that mobile phones underwent a paradigm shift in the period after 2005. Phones are no longer just communication devices. They are becoming internet, media, and application platforms. This transformation required 3 fundamental things from operating systems. 1. Natural user interface for touchscreens. 2. Simple and consistent APIs for application developers. 3. Hardware-independent, scalable software architecture. Symbian had structural problems in all 3 areas. First, Symbian's user interface layer was separate from the operating system. This created a fragmented ecosystem instead of a single Symbian experience. The second problem was on the developer side. The Symbian application development process was complex. C++-based APIs left memory management to the developer's responsibility. This also increased the risk of application crashes, extended development time, and discouraged new developers. Apple iOS and later Android, while focusing on the developer experience, Nokia continued to optimize Symbian within the existing hardware limitations. Internal company discussions played a key role here. Nokia's mid-level engineers reported in 2006 to 2008 that Symbian would not be able to adapt to touchscreens. However, this was a difficult proposal for management to accept. Because billions of dollars had been invested in Symbian, the current product roadmaps were based on Symbian. It would have put sales at risk in the short term. At this point, Nokia experienced a classic example of technical debt. Each new Symbian update consisted of temporary fixes added on top of the old architecture. Ultimately, Symbian failed not because it couldn't compete in the modern smartphone era, but because it was a system not designed for this era and was forcibly adapted to it.
January 9, 2007, a date that would forever change the mobile industry. With the iPhone, Apple induced a revolutionary capacity to power operating system.
When Steve Jobs took the stage in 2007, the iPhone was not technically a flawless product. There was no 3G, no App Store, and the battery couldn't be replaced. However, the main innovation brought by the iPhone was not the hardware, but a software philosophy centered on the user experience. Nokia management watched this launch closely, but the perceived threat was low. The iPhone was generally evaluated within the company as follows: expensive, poor battery life. The real big threat was coming silently. Google positioned Android not as a phone operating system, but as an ecosystem weapon. Android was free. Manufacturers could use this system without paying a license fee. This offer was extremely attractive for manufacturers such as Samsung, HTC, and LG. Build the hardware, install Android, connect to the Google ecosystem. Nokia, on the other hand, was trying to control both the hardware and the software itself. This situation led to a loss of flexibility. Nokia's answer to the iPhone and Android was the N97. It looked promising on paper, but in actual use, the touchscreen was unresponsive. The interface was inconsistent and software bugs were common. The application ecosystem was weak. This model became a symbol of how Nokia's hardware strength was rendered ineffective by its software weakness. Stephen Elop becoming CEO of Nokia in 2010 marked a fundamental shift in the company's direction. Elop spent most of his career at Microsoft and was closely aligned with software-centric thinking. The picture he encountered upon taking office was clear. Symbian had lost its competitive edge, and MeeGo was not ready. At this point, Nokia had three theoretical options. 1. Switching from Symbian to Android. 2. Accelerate MeeGo and make a long-term investment. 3. Establish a strategic alliance with an external software partner. A significant portion of the technical teams within the company were particularly advocating for the Android option. Nokia could have been a strong player in the Android ecosystem with its hardware capabilities. However, Android was seen as a strategic threat by senior management. Nokia was completely losing control over its software. Stephen Elop's choice was decisive here. The privilege of being the #1 manufacturer on Windows Phone. The opportunity to become the leader of a third ecosystem alternative to iOS and Android. On paper, this agreement seemed logical. However, in practice, there were serious problems. Windows Phone was innovative, but there were very few apps and developer interest was limited. A more critical issue was the timing error. When Nokia announced it would switch to Windows Phone, there was no competitive product on the market. This was a classic example of the Osborne effect. Nokia put all its eggs in one basket. In the end, Nokia lost its freedom in software. It couldn't differentiate itself in hardware either. From this point on, collapse was no longer a possibility, but a statistical certainty. September 2013 marked the official end of an era for the tech world. Microsoft announced that it has acquired Nokia's devices and services unit for $7.2 billion. This figure was a tragic end for an empire that was valued at hundreds of billions of dollars just a few years ago. The words of Risto Siilasmaa, CEO at the time, at the press conference announcing the sale, went down in history. We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. Actually, Nokia's biggest mistake was trying not to change anything. The Microsoft era also failed to meet expectations. The Windows Phone ecosystem never became a real competitor to iOS and Android. But while everyone thought Nokia had completely disappeared, the giant quietly shed its skin. Even though Nokia sold its device division, it retained the world's most valuable patent portfolio and network infrastructure unit. Today, Nokia may not be the brand of the phone in your pocket, but it is the architect of the network that phone connects to. From 5G technology to base stations, from cloud networks to data transmission, the world's digital nervous system is being built by Nokia. Nokia's story is proof that success can also be the biggest trap. Because in the world of technology, you can't win today's battle with yesterday's victories. Giants fall, empires crumble, but only those who can change survive in a different form. The only constant is change itself.